What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Culture 316 podcast. I'm one of your hosts and producers, Jordan Ihesi, joined by my co-host, Banks. What's going on, Brody?
That's all y'all need. Y'all can't even really see the muscle, but it's right there, brother. My freaks and my peaks.
On some Scott Steiner. Yo,
Yeah.
thank y'all thank you so much for tapping in with us again. Y'all know the drill. If you guys are listening via Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts, be sure to give us a 5 stars. Be sure to subscribe to the show. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, big shout out to TikTok. We've been getting some views and getting some traction on TikTok. If you haven't been following the TikTok, go to Culture 316 Pod, so POD. And also, yeah, I'm still on TMZ Strange and Suspicious throughout the remainder of this week. So be sure to catch that before the season ends. Oh, and one more thing. This Saturday, I should say, is SummerSlam. And because it's a PLE, we're going to be doing our 316 space. So come join and build community with us. 15 minutes before the show is when we gather on our X account at Culture 316. So if you want to watch SummerSlam with a hardcore group of wrestling fans that ain't living in their mama's basement, come and join us. But man, we got so much to talk about because there's been so many things happening in the world of pro wrestling. So let's get right into it. Hot off the presses is that Triple H and WWE have officially met with the mayor of London. There is a lot of heavy speculation attached to it that this could possibly mean something for WrestleMania. As you know, AEW has All in London scheduled for August 25th. John Cena, when he was in London, made a call for WrestleMania to be in London. We all know that the UK crowd is a crazy crowd, passionate bunch of fans. And there was a little video with Triple H in it. Short, I believe it was about 12 seconds. He said, we've been listening to you guys. I only have one question, and that is, are you ready? So a lot of speculation regarding a potential WrestleMania in London, but I got to check in with you, Banks. Do you feel like it is inevitable that we are getting WrestleMania London?
I think so. I think they're gonna go from London to Saudi, all
Mm.
over the world, Puerto Rico, all these places that they've been going. I think it's just to see if they can draw people. They definitely need to go to
Mm.
France, just because that's the best crowd
Absolutely.
I've seen in a long time. Especially when they was going up to Jay Uso and the phones was up. I was like, yeah, bro, that's all I need to see. I think the London show definitely needs to happen. AEW, Wembley isn't selling out, but they'll make a pretty good gate, which is fine. So I think they need to do it just because they've been all over their country. I mean,
Yeah.
Vegas is next year, and that stadium, the Oakland Raiders stadium, that's the only time they're gonna get a win. That stadium is in. If anybody hasn't been to that stadium yet, I mean, see your team that you like play against them. Otherwise, not don't see the trash Raiders. But that stadium is great. And then they owe Minnesota a pay per view or a WrestleMania, I should say. So that'll happen in 2026. After that, they might as well try to run it and go 2027 to London.
Mm. To kind of piggyback off of what you're saying, I think this is the next big step for WWE. They've kind of been positioning themselves for a potential WrestleMania on a global stage, right? With the past 2 to 3 years, with these PLEs being in the likes of France, in the likes of Puerto Rico, even having some pretty high stakes house shows in these other countries. And I think something that we had kind of talked about was, I mean, when it comes to the United States and WrestleMania, where else does WWE have to go? They've done pretty much everything twice at this point. I mean, with Allegiant Stadium and then Minnesota on the rise, that pretty much completes. They've done pretty much every big important stadium and every major media market in this country. So it's like, where else do you have left to go when it comes to the US? And I feel like London is just the next big stop. I think it's the next big thing. We've seen kind of how WWE has been positioning themselves for a big international show by doing other big international shows. Like we're talking about SummerSlam, but remember they still have Bash at Berlin, which is happening later in August, and
True.
then we also have Clash at the Castle that just happened. So this is something that WWE has been moving towards for years, really since Nick Khan took over the company as the president. I feel like there was always this idea that they have to expand, that they have to go beyond what they've been doing because they've been doing it long enough. And, it kind of almost feels like the international crowds have been competing for WrestleMania because it seems like one crowd is just topping the next, right? Like we talked about France, which was Backlash. Like when they popped for AJ Styles and they gave him that chant, I know he was trying to keep it together because them chants were crazy. So I feel like this is kind of the next big step. Now I think I'm gonna ask you, do you believe that obviously the UK is a big place. London itself is a big place. Not every stadium is Wembley Stadium. Do you think that WWE is going to make the choice to pick Wembley Stadium of all stadiums, or do you think that they're going to go with an alternate venue?
I'm unfamiliar with the stadium.
Mm,
The stadiums, I should say, in London. I mean, I was about to say Madrid. I don't think. Well, I don't know. I don't know too much about soccer like that. So whatever the biggest team is, as far as soccer in London, wherever
mm,
David Beckham used to play at, which I think is Madrid. I don't know, but
mm.
yeah, if it's Wembley, book that. If it's not Wembley, you got something that's to hold more capacity. Go for that because they're gonna get the numbers. They are at their highest ever
Yeah,
far as the money situation goes. And people over there in London got more money than us because they don't live in this crap hole country of America. So they can actually
yeah,
live pretty, it's expensive, but it ain't America expensive.
yeah. That's a fact. I mean, I think I had to look up stadiums in London or in the London area. I mean, obviously you have London Stadium, you have Emirates Stadium, which is Arsenal Stadium. They seat about 60,000 people, but it looks like Wembley is the largest stadium in London, right? And so I think beyond the fact that AEW has done All In London, when you're going for a spectacle, you go for the biggest venue, right? So I think that WWE, if they were to decide to do WrestleMania in London, they are probably going to do Wembley Stadium, and I think that that's going to create a very, very interesting dynamic as far as who's going to have the bigger gate there. Um, I don't want to give my predictions right now because we're too far out from that, but I think it should be a very, very interesting sight to behold. But I think that London, England, is a city that deserves a WrestleMania, but easily the international city that deserves it more than anyone else. And I'm looking forward to see kind of how they move forward with it. But I want to know how everybody else is feeling as it pertains to London potentially getting a WrestleMania. Let us know in the comments below if you feel like that's on the rise, but we're going to be moving on. So, another big topic this week in wrestling is that Warner Media and AEW have allegedly they have a deal. Money's in place. All right. According to SE Scoops, Warner and AEW have reached a deal in principle, meaning that they have not signed any contracts, they have not done any of the legal paperwork, but the word is out that they have come to an agreement and that they have reached a deal in principle. There is no dollar amount that has been reported or mentioned. We don't know much about the deal other than the fact that it looks like AEW content will be heading to Max. Max is the official streaming service of Warner Media, and this would also include pay-per-views. I assume that this would include some of their back catalog of TV shows as well. An announcement is set to be made over the next several weeks. So first things first, I need to know, bro, how do you feel about the fact that Warner and AEW have a new deal in place? There's money, there's an extension. Let me know how you feel.
Well, congratulations to them, first and foremost. People could say the product is bad, which it has been off and on this year, more so bad than good, but we still need them. So congratulations for them getting the TV deal. I think with Warner Discovery, they need something. All they got is hockey at this moment,
Yeah.
baseball, and now that TNT is leaving next season, they definitely needed something. So shouts out to AEW for getting that, getting that, and then it helps the workers again. So, you know, the biggest thing is the pay-per-views. They got to figure that out because nobody really has $50 just to spend on the pay-per-view. So,
Yeah.
if you plan on having the pay-per-views on HBO Max, I think that helps. Uh, the money part, they will have to work that out because they're so used to having, just like the old school thing, you get $50 to the pay per view, that's going straight to the company. So now they got to
Yeah.
figure out how they, or whatever figure they get, I guess that compensate for the money they would get for $50. It's not a lot of people spending $50 to begin with on pay per
Yeah.
views these days. It's not like coming up you had to watch it because we didn't have the internet and the economy was better, so you would spend $50. Now you got to kind of think about it. Hell, you got to think about when you spending $20 on groceries. You got to be like, shit, can I get this for 13 somewhere?
Right.
So I think it works out well. They definitely need that catalog of pay per views and episodes on there, because again, I can find these episodes online. I can find
Yeah.
these pay per views online. I have a
Yeah.
couple of them, stored in a Dropbox as bootlegging. But if you had them somewhere we could watch it, it works out well.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of agree with where you stand as far as the deal. One of the things that's important to note, we are wrestling fans. We
Yeah,
analyze the sport, we analyze the business. But one thing that we have to keep in mind is that it is extremely difficult to not only start any form of company, but to run it in such a way where you are getting money in order to sustain the longevity and the stability of the company. Regardless of what you feel about the AEW product, we are 5 years into the genesis of this company, and they have been able to secure multiple media rights deals from media companies across the world. We talk about Warner most prominently because Warner is a US based media company, but they've been able to strike deals with other companies elsewhere. And so to be able to have international distribution in place as well as a national media provider that allows them to be broadcasted into millions of homes is a big deal, and it shouldn't be taken lightly. We throw these numbers and these figures and these headlines around, but this is a major thing. This is major news. Not everyone can do what Tony Khan has done. Not everyone can do what AEW has done. So I feel like major kudos to them for being able to secure this deal. With that being said, I think there's a lot of things to consider. Max is the fourth most popular streaming service in the world. I believe that pay per views moving to Max would be major for them because it gains them a lot more visibility than if they were just going by a pay per view model, right? When we look at WWE and their relationship with Peacock, we are seeing that WWE is hitting record numbers. Most viewed Backlash ever, most viewed WrestleMania ever, most viewed insert PLE name viewed ever, right? A large part of that is because it's not just available to wrestling fans who watch the wrestling product on TV. It's available to whoever has Peacock. And you may lure in a couple people by, hey, what's this on tonight? I never heard of this, but I'll watch it. It's a very real thing. And now AEW pay-per-views are going to have a much larger potential of reaching a lot more people because it's going to be available on a lot more platforms than just by way of hearing it through AEW and their social media channels. So I think that is a very, very big upside. As far as the figures, I would imagine that whatever figure that they're giving them is going to compensate for the average amount of pay-per-view buys they get, maybe in a little bit more, considering that from a sports media perspective, they don't have as many properties, so they have a little bit more money to work with. Now, if Warner is profitable enough to sustain that is going to be for the next topic. But I think that AEW has been positioned to be able to receive a good amount of money just based off the fact that they're meeting a need and that they're filling a void when it comes to sports media properties in this company. Um, so there's that. But I think that this is a great move. I think also there were a lot of things that happened recently that we didn't really talk about that I think positioned them for this move. I think that the Collision Summer Series definitely added an appeal to the deal because, you know, Banks mentioned one time that AEW spending $9 to $10 million in excess on talent. And, that's, even though that's a lot of money, that's okay. But I feel like as an investor of a company, as an executive of a company, I need to see this money to work. And I also need to see you using the dollars that you have being used wisely, right? When you take this show and you put it in an environment where there's a hot crowd, where there isn't a lot of travel expenses included, or there isn't a lot of travel expenses kind of factored in the way that it would if you were moving from city to city. I think that it kind of sends the message that, hey, yes, we're spending a lot on talent, but we're also trying to save a lot of money on other things while not sacrificing the quality of the product. And I think that the fact that they were able to kind of do that, I think it speaks volumes to the Warner Media executives. But and I also feel like as much as it's not talked about, Tony Khan started playing nice with WWE. And what I mean by that is if you look at when they're going to be airing Collision next week, it's going to be 2 hours before SummerSlam. There was a time where he was trying to go head to head. And then in an interview, he also said one time that WWE was the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling. That's a heavy statement. I don't think there were any positive connotations meant to that. But more recently, when somebody asked if he would be willing to do business with the WWE, that tone changed. He said, I don't know if they're interested, but I would be interested in doing an event like that. And while that may not mean a lot to wrestling fans, it means a lot to media executives because we know that WWE is the big dog. And we know that companies are more willing to invest in other companies that are willing to collaborate with companies that can bring in more profit. And we don't know if a WWE AEW crossover is going to happen, but the fact that Tony is open to it means that he's mature enough from a business standpoint to not shut any doors prematurely or to shut any doors via preference. At least that is the public perception of it. But I'm just glad that AEW and Warner have a deal, and now looks like AEW is going to last longer than WCW. It's going to last longer than Monday Nitro. I know that's a fact. I know Collision is going to have more. Not Collision. I know Dynamite's going to have more episodes than Nitro. So I don't know how Eric Bischoff is going to take to that. But let us know how you feel about this deal. But speaking of deals, I feel like there's something larger happening in sports that has heavy implications on wrestling, and that is the NBA on TNT deal that was just struck. Not even NBA on TNT, I should say, because it seems as if NBA on TNT, their last year will be this upcoming season, 2024-2025, meaning that this will be the end of Inside the NBA on TNT, highly regarded as one of the most iconic sports shows, if not the most iconic sports show. And it is largely in part due to the fact that the NBA has struck an 11-year, $76 billion media rights deal with a plethora of networks, one of those networks being ESPN Disney, another one of those networks being NBC, which we will see the return of NBA on NBC, and then another one of those networks is a tech giant named Amazon. And they will be doing 2 national games per week. It looks like, based on the structure of this media deal, the NBA will have a national game on every single day of the week, which is huge for the NBA. But I wanted to know kind of your take on this. 11 years, $76 billion, and the utilization of Amazon alongside other traditional media outlets like ESPN and NBC.
Well, I didn't know that part about it being, a game on every single day. I
Mm-hmm.
think that works out well because a lot of people go to these streaming services. Myself personally, where you pay $20 a month, you get to see any team, any live event, etc. So this helps out if I'm on, let's say, Amazon, and I want to see the Knicks play, but they're in the Sun Market or they're on the Knicks Network or MSG. I'm sorry, MSG TV. But
Mm-hmm.
because I have Amazon or ESPN, well, Amazon. I have Amazon now, so I could watch them without going through the sites. And then,
Mm-hmm.
I pay $15 a month already for Amazon Prime. Might as well watch it. So I think
Right.
that's perfect, just because you get to watch it. No, you can't miss out on your team because it'll be
Right.
on one of those channels. Uh, again, like we talked about before with team inside the NBA, all good things come to the end. almost 30 years of that program being on. We gonna
Mm,
miss the guys, but even Chuck said this was his last year. Uh, if they try to bring anybody over, more so, I think Ernie would more likely stay with Turner just because he's been there forever. But Shaq and Kenny might actually go to the NBC or whatever Amazon inside the Amazon, whatever the case may, be, or inside the NBA, but it would be on Amazon or
mm,
one of the channels. So they probably go. Who knows? Or they might say, "Nah, forget it." But at the same time, if that happens, Jamal Crawford, he's been working a lot on TNT. Grant Hill from time to time, Draymond Green. So they'll have people that's willing to go work over there, and that's fine. Make
mhm.
some money. The older guys, they made a lot of money from doing something that they said doesn't feel like work, and that's the bottom line when it comes to life. We want to do stuff that doesn't feel like work. I'm tired of getting up, doing stuff I don't want to do, and it does feel like work. Whereas I do podcasts and other stuff, and it doesn't feel like work.
Right. I felt that. I'm excited. I'm excited as a basketball fan. I'm super excited. I'm very excited about the NBA on NBC kind of return. It looks like they're going to bring back the original theme song. I feel like that NBA on NBC. If you watch basketball anytime in the 90s or the early 2000s, NBA on NBC was everything. As soon as you heard that intro, you knew what it meant. And I feel like the nostalgia aspect coupled with the fact that the talent gap in the NBA is closing at such a rapid pace. You have so many good teams and that are igniting so many franchises that are, kind of on the up and up. Obviously, the Boston Celtics, an iconic franchise, reigning NBA champions. But then you also have teams like the New York Knicks, who haven't won an NBA title in 50 years, but have a very, very loud and rabid, passionate fan base who is hooked on anything Knicks. And they are able to bring kind of a level of excitement to this program that I don't think that they're going to be able to do anywhere else. So I'm excited about the NBA on NBC. On the other hand, man, I'm not even going to lie when it comes to this Amazon deal, which is nuts. Um, I saw this coming. Tech giants, streaming giants are the future of sports media. And right now they're coming alongside these media networks, but the reality is that there's going to become a day where they're going to really be the only one standing. Amazon owns 50 something percent of Bally Sports or something along those lines. They own a good amount of Bally Sports. Bally Sports is responsible for like the majority of local NBA teams, hockey teams, even some NHL teams. I mean, NFL teams, I should say. And so when you take that into consideration, they're in a position where they're owning a good amount of local media. They're going to be in a position where they're going to be able to compete on a national media standpoint. Um, and I think that this was kind of we see it around the industry though, right? We see Netflix with Raw, we see MLS with Apple, now we see the NBA along with the NFL on Amazon Prime, and they're going to continue to do these type of deals and court them, meaning they're going to provide them with the top of the line equipment, the best directors, the best ADs, the best camera operators, because they have the capital. They have billions of dollars in a reserve that they can just spend. And if they and it's going to be scary because the way that this works is that they're just going to spend for the sake of spending. Not actually, let me take that back. They're not going to spend for the sake of spending, but they're going to spend so that if anybody else tries to spend at the rate that they do, they will go out of business. They're going to force people to spend more money than what they have and allow them to go out of business. And now they're going to be the sole proprietors of that market. And I think that that's insane to think about. But I'm excited about the NBA being on NBC. Obviously, I'm really, really sad to see inside the NBA on TNT go after this season, but everything must come to an end, like you said. So I want to know how y'all feel about this. I know this isn't wrestling related, but it's something that, you know, fits into the world of sports and definitely has ramifications on the pro wrestling product as well. So you let us know in the comments below. But we're going to be moving on because this is not the only deal that's been a topic of conversation this past week, and that is the contract negotiation surrounding CM Punk. According to Forbes, it looks like CM Punk is renegotiating his WWE contract. He originally signed a contract when he came in for Survivor Series. That contract is set to last him through 2026. We know that Punk has been medically cleared, but he hasn't had a lot of in-ring action. In spite of that, backstage officials are very, very pleased about his attitude, his willingness to help out a lot of the younger guys, and just overall his ambiance has been, it seems like, an asset backstage. So I want to know how you feel about CM Punk being, it sounds like CM Punk is going to be a WWE lifer at this point.
Us a given. He going back, we knew this was going to happen, but they were kind of like skeptical of his personality, and they probably was like, we gotta be on skates because remember 9 years ago how he acted. But he's doing too well for their social media. The numbers are up there. People are interested in the programs when he has one. Even when he's not there and people cutting promos about him, people are excited just to see him. So they making the money at the gate, the merch sales. Hopefully he renegotiated that so he can get more from the merch sales. Cause I know it wasn't the numbers weren't as high as they should be now, just because the merch is moving. Every time you come up with a T-shirt, it moves. So I think this is great. Even if he doesn't wrestle a lot, like God forbid if he gets hurt again, people still want to see him. He did commentary a little bit, so it'll be a way for him to still be implemented in programs and still make the money that he's making now because people just want to see him. People shout CM Punk even when he wasn't there. They did it at AEW for a time and then they stopped. So yeah, they had to renegotiate this deal.
Kind of on the piggyback of what you said, man, Punk is a needle mover. And we saw it. We saw how significant CM Punk is to the pro wrestling spreadsheet when he left AEW. Collision ratings drop, attendance drop, and I don't think that people wanted to admit it, but he is an X factor. And when he came to WWE, ratings were up, attendance went up, merchandise was moving. And you can sit up here and you can debate his attitude or whatever you want to. He's a difference maker in this business and in any company he decides to be involved in, to the point where his dog has merch now. That's moving. We ain't even consider that. His dog has merch, and his dog's merch is doing better than most AEW and WWE wrestlers. Because and it's not a testament to how good or whatever those wrestlers are. It's just a testament to how popular CM Punk is. I think that just being able to help out younger talent shows his ability to be an asset in multiple ways. And the fact that he's been able to have a storyline and he wasn't even medically cleared to wrestle. He's been able to essentially have our attention on a wrestling product without him wrestling for the better part of 7 months. Hasn't been able to wrestle. That is nuts. And it speaks to how valuable he is. But man, I think that he should definitely get that contract extension. I 100% believe that he's worth it. I 100% believe that he's going to retire in WWE. He is a part of a company that has the structure that I believe Punk was looking for in AEW, the structure and the professionalism that he was looking for in AEW. He found it back in WWE, and I'm pretty sure they're allowing him the creative wherewithal to do what he pleases, obviously with discretion. But I think that he's getting everything he wants, and I feel like he's going to get more money. But let us know in the comments below how you feel about this potential CM Punk contract extension, if he's going to be a WWE lifer or not. Let us know in the comments below. But man, speaking of possibilities, there has been reports from PWN that there is a strong possibility of a Worlds Collide event featuring NXT and TNA wrestling. Now, obviously, we've seen a bunch of cross branding between TNA and NXT. We've seen the Rascals on NXT. We've seen Jordan Grace on NXT. We've also seen Charlie Dempsey and his faction on TNA, as well as a couple of other women superstars from NXT on TNA. But this Worlds Collide event, I think it kind of sends the collaboration over the top. But I want to know your thoughts. How do you feel about this event potentially happening?
Like you just said, they basically seamlessly already doing it.
Yeah.
It just, it's getting closer to that buy time. I really feel
Mm-hmm.
like the writing is on the wall for WWE to buy TNA, simply just based on this interaction they've had all year. And with TNA, as TNA Mark that I am, it's probably my second first favorite promotion ever. They've always had backers since, when they went global Force Wrestling, I believe, when it was with they went off that when Jeff Jarrett tried to get away from Dixie Carter, and then essentially they went back, or essentially they went from that to Impact Wrestling, and then back to TNA Wrestling. So with them, they've always like rebranded because they haven't had so many people that just like either bought some stake into the company or bought the company. With them now, it's getting to a point where it's just like, do they still have any backers? They got a TV deal, yes, but it seems like it's a play more so to buy them. Like when AEW was doing business with them in 2021, that was just, fan fiction, just coming to reality and, having nostalgia with Christian Cage winning a world title again. That's all it really was. But I think more so now the play is for them to be bought. Uh I love TNA again, but are they worth a lot? Probably not. They don't have a lot of talent on there as well. uh, when you watch the show, it's kind of like the same people over and over, and it's been like that for the past couple of years. So, if they get bought, I think it's mainly just for the catalog, just because that catalog is just major with the best of matches, and then getting their YouTube channel as well. But as far as the question goes, I think it'd be great, but we kind of already seeing that anyway to begin with. I think you on mute, brother.
My bad.
Yeah.
I do want to say that I think that the NXT and TNA Worlds Collide event would be amazing. I think it would be special, especially with these signings that WWE has had with Julia and Stephanie Vaquer. I feel like the sky is the limit. I feel like WWE was able to successfully court TNA um, in a way that AEW wasn't. And I think that part of it was just due to the pandemic, obviously, with things not being able to be open the way that they used to be. Um, but I believe that they were able to court them in a way that shows that they can be a good business partner. But like you said, I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if Endeavor is looking to buy TNA. I don't think that WWE has the power to buy TNA, considering that it's a company under a company. But I don't know much. But I wouldn't be surprised if Endeavor bought TNA Wrestling and put it under the TKO umbrella. We saw how they kind of removed, unfortunately, Scott D'Amore from TNA Wrestling, and he was very, very passionate about that brand and about that product. And I can tell you for a fact that I feel like he would want it to be an independent product. He would want to do business relationships with with a AEW or with a WWE, but he wouldn't want that to be sold. There's a possibility that they removed him so that there wouldn't be any internal friction when it comes to potentially selling the company. And that may be a reason why. I don't know. I'm just giving my opinion. But I feel like it's inevitable, like you said, that the TNA WWE relationship is going to blossom into a time in which the two can become one, or one would be under the other. And I think we know what the pecking order of that would be. But as for the event, man, TNA and NXT have such deep talent rosters that they can pull off a lot. Jordan Grace and Roxanne and Steph and Julia, and then you have Moose and the System on one side, and then on the other side you have Trick Williams and Javon Evans and Ethan Page. Like, Josh Alexander is still in TNA. We can get a North reunion, a We the North reunion with Josh Alexander and Ethan Page, and considering that they're both heels now, And then obviously we know Joe Hendry, and we know how much of a superstar that he is and how much he's kind of popped off in the past really 2 months, as far as his surging popularity amongst the NXT crowd and amongst pro wrestling in general. But I think that it can happen and it could be something special. But we want to know how y'all feel about this potential WWE TNA crossover worlds collide event. Let us know in the comments below. But this is something that I'm excited to talk about. It has been brought to our attention, the contractual status of Bobby Lashley and MVP, both of them who were WWE contracted wrestlers before. They ended up leaving and they ended up going to other companies, and then they ended up coming back. Bobby Lashley, obviously a former world champion, MVP, also coming back and being a U.S. champion again, and also being a mainstay of the Hurt Business faction. Now we saw how these contracts are expiring, but towards the end of their contracts, we saw MVP liking comments about Triple H booking black wrestlers and how Bobby Lashley was a very, very big, adamant fan of bringing back the Hurt Business. Obviously, things did not go as planned, but it kind of started a catalyst. It was a catalyst for the discussion regarding the booking of black wrestlers, where whether there was no Hurt Business being brought back, or we saw how they paired Jade with Bianca, amongst other things. But I kind of wanted to know your opinion on how WWE books black wrestlers. You're on mute. Oh, you're on mute, bro. You're on mute.
My fault. My fault. No. So I will say that this is something we've been seeing for a while now, since Triple H has been in control. Am I surprised? Not really. It's the same guy that did mannerisms of Gorilla when he was mocking Mark Henry. This is the same guy who had a program with Booker T, and Booker T shouldn't have went over, and he said you got nappy hair. Same guy that did blackface when they was clowning the Nation of Domination. I'm not surprised by anything. I think people always get surprised when the devil tends to be the devil, and I'm not calling Triple H the devil, but you are who you show us to be. So I'm not surprised by this. You see the Street Profits. I mean, that's kind of running this course, and it has been for a while. I think we people get enamored with the idea of Montez being a solo act. That's not a good idea. Angelo Dawkins is better anyway, and I'm gonna stand on that, and I'm gonna keep saying that because he keeps working. Not saying Montez ain't working at the craft, but I see more so of Dawkins working, and Montez probably working behind the scenes, but it shows in the ring who's getting better. So they were tied when they had the pride. They were tied to Bobby Lashley. Uh, and then you look at NXT, a lot of the black women, it's kind of like they got to be sassy, so to speak. They got to have an attitude, so to speak, to get over. Now, when we cut to when the old man was in charge, yeah, you have kind of like the same things, but they'll get a shot. It'll be some coonery type characters. I don't need to say no names, but they'll be there. They'll be prominent. Uh, but more so now, it's kind of like they just not on TV. Like it's other than Bianca and Jade, I can't think of any black workers that's always on my screen. And with AEW, it's kind of like the same thing. Like, where's Powerhouse Hobbs at? I'm seeing a large amount of Willow, which is great for me personally. But it's other workers that we're not seeing there. Obviously, the Ricky Starr situation is done. He's about to leave. But if we're just staying with WWE, it's like, dude, like Cedric, everybody's going to NXT. Like Cedric and Ashanti, they're on NXT now. Ricochet, he's more likely gone. It's like, what happened with that? So I'm not surprised by this. Like, really, what MVP is doing, even though he's doing like that mysterious stuff, I'm really not surprised by it because again, this guy is showing us exactly who he is, being Triple H.
What I will say, and I think that this is something that we talked about before, because you do see a lot of black wrestlers leaning into stereotypes. Do I think that there are black wrestlers who are just kind of just leaning into who they are or a portion of who they are in order to portray a character? I absolutely believe so. Um, when it comes to Triple H per se, yes, he did all those things when he was a talent. I believe, however, from an executive standpoint, he is trying to more so do a reset than a removal. And what I mean by that is that when I look at how he booked Ember Moon in NXT and how even when, she went up to the main roster and Vince wasn't treating her right, she went back to NXT and she became an NXT tag champion. And she was prominently featured and she was having TV time and she was able to kind of be herself. But I also noticed kind of how black talents aren't necessarily portrayed as much as they are received. Right? If you look at the statistics, if you look at all wrestling programs for WWE, 50% or more of those viewers are white. And so when it comes to the portrayal of black characters, I believe you have to align yourself with your audience whenever you're trying to portray characters. Because if it's not presented in a way that they can digest it, then it won't be well received. Unfortunately, even though we live in a DEI world, and I'm doing air quotes for a reason because I don't believe we do, even though we live in a DEI world, I don't think that the majority of people that are of non people of color, I should say, I don't think that a lot of middle America sees the value of blackness outside of incivility or outside of the context of hip hop culture. I believe that the only time that the majority of America sees value in blackness is when it's aligned with hip hop. And not even hip hop as a whole, just the brand of hip hop that is defiant, that is rebellious, that is borderline violent, that's sassy, that has an attitude, that's hyper aggressive, that plays into stereotypes or plays into kind of like a street-esque image.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that when you are putting forth a product, you have to understand your audience. And I believe that WWE understands that the world isn't ready. A lot of the world isn't ready to digest the full spectrum of blackness. And because of that, I think that has a direct role on the characters that are being portrayed. Now, I love all of the characters that are out. I love Trick Williams, Javon Evans, Carmelo Hayes, Jada Parker. I love them all. I love them all. I think they're all dope. I
I
think they're
love
all
Jada Parker
great.
too.
I love them all. I just feel like diversity isn't just putting more black people on screen. It's putting all different types, regardless of how they would be received. Right? I would love to see another black woman who's more rock and roll than she is hip hop. You know what I mean? Because now that taps into a whole different side. I would love to see a black woman who has a Kiana James-esque character. As far as being like the businesswoman suit, that would be tough. I feel like
Yeah,
that's
but
needed.
like, all right.
Huh?
They
Kiana
said she's
James, she is a black woman. Yes.
like,
But
listen.
another one.
I
Um,
don't. I don't confuse the logic thing going on. No disrespect.
what'd you say?
She got the logic thing going on. I'm confused. The
I'm
Mariah
weak.
Carey thing going on.
Not the
I'm
Mariah
confused.
Carey thing. I've that skipped my mind that Kiana James was a black woman. However, her blackness is not to be questioned or to be, she's a black woman. However, I feel like because she is a fairer tone black woman, a lot of people thought she was white. Still a black woman. She's one of us. But a lot of people were able to digest the character that she was because she was a lighter skinned black woman that kind of looked almost like if she was white. But I feel like all different types of black characters are needed, men and women. And I feel like, when you had something like the Hurt Business, you saw that. You saw black men moving like the mafia. And that's what I loved about them. That they move like the mob, that they move like the mafia, that they were clean cut. They were almost like very Evolution-esque, right? And how they moved and how the structure of that faction was. And I feel like they could have done something crazy. They could have done Hurt Business versus Bloodline. They could have done Hurt Business versus Judgment Day. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to see that. But I hope for the future, based on the current crop of superstars that WWE is developing, that we can get something like that in the future. And I believe that that's possible. But let us know how y'all feel about how black wrestlers are booked compared to their white contemporaries. But we are moving on because WWE has signed yet another blockbuster talent in Delta. Delta was a wrestler that was based in Australia. She recently competed in her last match in Australia against her brother in a company called RCW. So I want to know, how do you feel about this signing? How do you feel about Delta being a part of WWE? And does this help the WWE women's division?
I don't know who she is. I need to do some research, but it definitely helps the women's division. They're getting stacked up just like the tag division. I'm with it. That's all I can really say. Otherwise than that, hey, I'm not familiar with her game. I'll do some research on it.
Funny thing is, I had to do a little bit of research on her. She's legit. She's competed in matches against Jordynne Grace for the TNA Knockouts World Championship, which is their women's championship, during a WrestleMania weekend event, I believe it was. I have to do more research on her, but she looks like the real deal. She can go in the ring. She has the look. And I feel like this only helps because depending on where she goes, she's going to help strengthen that roster. And I believe that she's a very, very unique character if she's going to NXT. And I feel like she's going to add a lot of value based on where she's going. And because of who she is, I feel like there's so many ways you can go about her. She can be a heel. She can be a face, depending on how you present her. I feel like she can be a speaker if you want her to. Maybe she's a little bit more soft-spoken. Maybe she can be somebody's enforcer. So the opportunities are endless. But I feel like adding a talent like that who is proven to be good in the ring, and I think it's a great signing for them. And I'm very, very excited to see where they go from here. But let us know how y'all feel about the addition of Delta to the WWE women's division. Leave it in the comments below. But yeah, man, that concludes our show. I love that show. That was a good show. That was good topics. Once again, 316 space this Saturday for SummerSlam. We're going to be on 15 minutes before the show. Head over to our X account and follow us at Culture316, and be sure to follow us on TikTok at Culture316pod. Once again, my name, the Yeet Glasses, is crazy.
You already know, oops.
But thank y'all so much for tapping in with my guy Banks and us. And we will be back next week.
Yeah.